To the keepers of the house of light. My name is Yehuda ben Israel, and the brothers.
Uriah ben Israel.
Obadiah ben Israel.
Shabbat Shalom, Deacon Obadiah, Elder
Shabbat
Uriah,
Shalom.
praise Yah.
Shabbat Shalom,
Praise.
Elder. And
Praise
Deacon.
Yah. Shabbat Shalom. It's good to be here, and we'd like to welcome everyone to today's Sabbath service discussion. As we have been doing for a little over a year now, we just thank Yahweh for the blessing to be able to come on the air live. And today we are live streaming, and we're going to continue just to do these works. Today's class is entitled The Blessings and the Curses, Identification of Israel. The blessings and curses, the identification of Israel. I'm going to say it one more time, make sure it's clear. The blessings and the cursings, identification of Israel. The brothers, praise Yah, last week, we've been, not just last week, but we've been doing a series entitled Moshe's Final Instructions to the Children of Israel. And we've broken that down into various parts because the children of Israel are finally getting ready to cross over the Jordan and enter into their possession, the land of Israel. And they've been taught all the things they need to know. They've been given the laws, all the holy things in order to remain in that land and to keep Yahweh's covenant and to be a holy people before him. So this is where we are. We're still in this part of the journey of these final instructions to the children of Israel. But you're going to see here, the brothers finished up Deuteronomy 27 last Shabbat. But today we're going to start in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, which is very critical to Israel. It applies to us very, very, very applicable today. Am I right, brothers?
Yes, sir.
Yes, my Elder.
Praise Yah.
Praise.
So, but before we jump into the class, we're going to go ahead and do our pre-class readings. And before we do that, but who are we, first of all? Who are we? The keepers of the house of light are brothers dedicated to spreading the truth, love, mercy, and forgiveness of our Father, Yahweh Elohim of hosts, whose name be blessed forever and forever. But primarily through his son that he sent, Yeshua the Messiah, or Yeshua the Christ, and some may say Yeshua HaMashiach, the Lamb of Yahweh, the King of Israel, the High Priest of Israel, and of course, our Redeemer and Savior. Again, whose name is blessed forever. We're here to teach and to proclaim the gospel of Yeshua, who magnifies Yahweh's law and made it honorable, who made it perfect. And that's who we're here. See, if you're talking about any other gospel besides Yeshua, or any other doctrine besides Yeshua, you're in the wrong way. Let's just remember that. I don't care if they call themselves super Hebrew Israelite. If they're not teaching the gospel of Yeshua HaMashiach,
Correct.
they're false prophets. They're false teachers.
That's right.
That's right.
They're false teachers. I'm sorry. The day is too long now. We're getting late in the day now. We got to tell y'all straight way that these people are false teachers. If you're bogged down in Christianity and the doctrines of Christianity that tell you the law of Yahweh, the Creator, is nailed to a proverbial cross, you're in the wrong way. Those are
Correct.
false teachers. They may be blind, but they're leading you because you're blind. So we know where that's going to end up, right, brothers?
That's right.
The blind leading the blind. So,
Mm.
Well,
you got to be able to hear the truth and know how to verify is the truth. You verify is the truth by what is written, right?
That's right.
So I'm going to segue over to the Elder Uriah. So, we're going to go to the Shema so we can begin to hear these things. So I'm going to turn it over to Elder Uriah for the pre-class readings.
Hey, thank you, my elder and deacon. I'm going to start the pre-class reading in the book of Deuteronomy by reading the Shema, which can be found in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 and 5. And this Shema, it derived from the Hebrew word shamar, which
Right.
means listen or hear the commandment of the Most High Yah. Verse 4. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh, O Elohim, is one Adonai, and thou shalt love Yahweh, thy Elohim, with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might.
Okay. Praise Yah.
Praise Yah. Praise Yahweh for the Shema and its understanding that come along with it. Now let's turn to the book of Matthew chapter 22, and we're going to pick it up at verse 34. And here we can see where the Son of God, the Mashiach himself, the Messiah, glorify or magnify the Shema itself.
There it is. Right.
Verse 34. But when the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence, they were gathered together. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him and saying, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Yeshua said unto him, Thou shalt love Yahweh thy Elohim with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophet. Praise Yah.
Praise Yah.
Praise.
Let's remain still in the book of Matthew, Matthew chapter 18, verse 20. Matthew chapter 18, verse 20. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. Praise Yahweh for those words through his son, Yeshua,
Praise
that
Yah.
give us authority.
Well, it just lets us know to be mindful. Yahweh doesn't need a cathedral full of people.
That's right.
To carry out his word to do what he wants to be done. He doesn't need a whole cathedral, thousands of people. He just needs some obedient people that got the right heart, got the right spirit.
That's right.
Come together to hear truth, to glorify the Father. You know, and he said he'll be there. So
That's right.
Amen. Those are powerful words, particularly in that Gospel Matthew 18, verse 20.
Yeah. I mean, what did he say unto Moshe? He said, step aside and let me form another nation out of these rocks. I'm just paraphrasing.
Yeah.
So he have the power to do anything he want to do.
Right.
Correct.
Me and the brother Obi were talking one day, and it took, Obi, we were saying that Yahweh used the prayer of one man saved the whole city.
That's right.
That's right. Yep.
Now
One
look at
righteous
it.
man.
He used one man to save the entire world. One man.
See there?
to save
Right.
whoever he want to be saved in this word, from this
Right.
word.
And we saw Father Abraham do that and save Lot out of that city of Sodom and Gomorrah.
That's right.
That's right.
They couldn't find too many. But we see that what we're saying makes sense. What we just read in the gospel. It makes sense.
A lot of sense. Now let's turn to the book of Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 58, verse 13. Verse 13. If thou turn away thy foot from the Shabbat, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day, and call the Shabbat the delight, the holy of Yahweh, honorable, and shall honor him, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure, nor speaking thine own words, then shalt thou delight thyself in Yahweh, and I will cause thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father, for the mouth of Yahweh has spoken it. The mouth of Yahweh has spoken it. It's going to
Amen.
come to pass.
See, and when you say the mouth of Yahweh, amen, it's going to come to pass. But these are the holy men of Yahweh, his prophets. Isaiah, they spoke as the Holy Spirit moved them.
That's right.
Correct.
And we know that they were right because we see what they said has come to pass. We can see those things in our lifetime. Yahweh's preserved us to come into this truth and to come into knowledge. Right? So we can sit here today as as witnesses to the scriptures that hey, Yahweh is telling the truth. His prophets did not lie. And if you think Yahweh's prophets are a lie, well, bring your prophets. Get them out. Bring them on out.
Show me what you can do.
Come on now. Bring them out. Show us what they can do. And we'll see how. And you might get, if we don't test Yahweh, but you don't be like how Elijah, is it Elijah or Eli?
Praise Yahweh, man. As we look back, and Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy, and this is like a rehearse to the children of Israel just before they go and take the land of Israel, or the land of Canaan, that Yahweh has promised the children of Israel. He has given this land to the children of Israel. And as we go through this book, the book of Deuteronomy, I mean, it's packed, fully loaded. It's firing from every different angle. So this really is our DNA, which is written in the book of Deuteronomy 28. I mean, we're not dealing with science now, where you can do actually a DNA. These are the words that is written by the Creator himself, given to the children of Israel, so we can recognize who are the children of Israel. Yeah, I know back then we didn't have any what's the apparatus to do DNA, to find out too. So, there's a reason why Yahweh have left this book, preserve it, give it to our prophets, and leave it to our prophets. So our prophets can use this apparatus to identify the children of Israel. Praise Yah.
Praise Yah. Praise Yah.
Praise Yah. So we already completed up unto Deuteronomy 27. So we're gonna pick it up at Deuteronomy 28. And within this segment, hopefully, our brother or deacon, he's gonna introduce a lot of videos. And I hope you guys, the visitors, bear with us and watch these videos and see see okay. Yeah, you maybe have to log back in, and then Obi's watching out for you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sometimes, the devil have some ways of, interfering with the works of the Most High. Yeah. And that's the bottom line. We have to overcome, because the one that overcome all these fights, all these battles with the devil, shall sit with the Messiah in his kingdom. Yeah, because that's the hope that Yahweh has put into our heart to do his will. We have to do his will. We can't do the will of the flesh. We have to fight each and every day. Yes, we have to run this race each and every day until the very end.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Praise
Yeah.
Yahweh.
Yeah, praise Yahweh, man.
Okay. I'm trying to connect our elder back in here.
Okay. Hey
Come
man,
Yeah,
I
on,
don't know
Mary.
what happened. I didn't even.
our Ella has returned from
Yeah,
around the world.
I went into the. I don't know what you call it. It just pushed me out into the void. I went
Into
into
the
the
void
void
here.
and back. But praise God, because we may step out, but nevertheless, that was like, whoa, what happened? Kicked me right out. But that's what Uriah laid it right out. Satan tries to knock us down,
That's right.
keep us from going forward in what we're trying to do. But what were you saying, Uriah?
Yeah, I praise Yahweh. I said this book of Deuteronomy 28 is fully packed. It's loaded. The
Turn your volume down.
identification. This is our DNA. So go straight ahead into it, my Ella.
I think we're getting a little feedback.
All right. We
Yeah.
should be good now, elder.
Okay.
All
Praise
right.
God.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
We're all loaded and ready whenever you're ready.
Ella, so many things, there's so many things is going on in the world today. For example, look in the two banks that have been closed down. What is going to happen to our money? We know the paper is no good after a while, but these banks, they also control, I think, a part of the Bitcoins. Also, what we're going to do, is this a start of the beginning of the end?
Well, I think we get a lot of feedback all of a sudden. Let me see if it's my phone. Let me see.
In order for you to bring about a reset to the system, you're going to have some type of catastrophic event to occur in order to convince the people that this is the best way to save you, to get us out of this problem. If you study the Hegelian dialect, you'll see that these things are actually being orchestrated by design.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the term. I'm glad you brought up the term reset. And I'm going to say it from a different perspective. Yahweh is resetting it. Yahweh's getting ready to reset the whole thing. He's allowing it to be done by the prince of the world and his servants, but it's according to his will, because we got it in the book. It's going to go down.
That's right.
See, I think that's the beauty of when we look at this thing. We're able to look at the Hegelian dialect, thesis, antithesis. We look at all those, and they use their wisdom. But what did Yahweh say? He's going to bring their wisdom to nothing.
Correct. We're getting a little feedback from you, elder.
You getting feedback to me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We're getting a little bit of feedback.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. Let me see. I was hitting it from everyone. I think we got it. I'm going to try to turn the volume down.
Yeah, take down your volume.
Yeah. I'm hearing it from you too. But how about now? Okay. But nevertheless.
Yes. Go ahead. Proceed.
we'll just proceed, and I may have to pull out for a second. We'll see to get this component done. But we left off. We're going to begin today's class in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28. And as Elder Uriah was saying, there's a lot of prophetic meat in this chapter. And it pretty much all out in Deuteronomy, the blessing and the curses. And our title of this class is saying, they're the blessings and the curses, but this is how you identify the children of Israel today. Period. Because once you read the book, you're going to see that you're going to understand that Israel is going to be scattered to the four corners. We read that in Leviticus 26, right? We read it in Genesis, I believe, 15, when he told Yahweh told Abraham or Abram, know for a surety that thy seed will be strangers in a land not their own, and they're going to be afflicted there. Correct me, brothers, if I say the wrong thing, but they're going to be afflicted there for 400 years. And Yahweh's going to bring them out.
Elder, I'm gonna bring you in and bring you back out because your connection is giving a lot of feedback. Give me 1 second.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
that's
a
good.
beautiful day. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Hello?
my elder.
Hello?
Yeah.
That's better?
Let's try that.
Okay. We were doing good, and then all of a sudden it went out. We're so sorry, people, that we keep having these technical things.
It's one of the best time, for the devil to intervene.
Elder, see if you can log out and connect back in.
Okay. Which one?
Yeah.
Yeah. You go ahead and log back in. What we maybe gonna start? We maybe gonna introduce. We maybe gonna introduce some videos. I'm getting a feedback too. How's my feedback?
Yeah, I'm getting some feedback from you.
All right, maybe what you can do, you maybe can mute your mic, or mute or unmute and see if it's any better.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will go ahead and put it.
We ask our viewers or listeners to bear with us. We do have a little technical difficulties. We don't know where this popped up from, but we know it's from the devil anyway. Want to stop? Always want to stop the work of the Most High from getting out. But that's what we said. We're gonna overcome. This is a fully packed, class with information which we need to deliver, to you guys out there.
All right, now Elder, continue.
Okay, praise Yah. Yeah.
Yeah, forgive us. We apologize for the technical difficulties. We want to make sure that everything is going to come across clear and that you're able to hear, because we have a lot of information we want to share as Yahweh allow.
Oh, you're coming through fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I mute your mic
Can I
when
mute
I'm
your
when
mic
I'm
when
on my
I'm
mic
on my mic
and say, if it's
and
work
say,
up a little
if
better,
it works a
you
little
can
better?
come in and out
You
at
can
any
come
time
in
you
and out
want.
at any time you want.
Yeah, we praise Yahweh for this
Yeah. We
moment,
pray
for
out
this
for this
day,
moment, for this
allowing us to
day,
be here,
to be
before His
here,
throne of
before His
grace,
throne of grace,
knowing that we are not worthy
knowing that
to
we're not
even to
worthy
do
to even
His
to do
work.
His work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're
Elder
still
Uriah,
getting
you
a
might
few.
need to connect out and connect back in because you're still echoing.
All right, you take
And
it over.
All
I
right.
will come back in.
I'll come back.
Okay,
Okay.
let me bring in Elder Yehuda.
okay.
Okay.
Hello, gentlemen. I'm back.
That sounds good.
That sounds good.
Okay.
You bring in Yahuda?
You
Let me go.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Shalom, shalom,
Shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat
Shalom.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
I don't hear any echo on you, Uriah, at this
Okay,
point.
I'm gonna go out.
Okay, I'm gonna go out.
Oh, I hear it then, yeah.
All right. Shabbat shalom, Elder.
Hey, Shabbat shalom.
It's special.
All
Yeah.
right.
We just getting that little delay, it seems like. Well, you know what I
Well,
think
I think
what we may want to do at
we
this
may want
juncture,
to
and
do
I'm gonna
this
let
You sound good now, Elder. Praise
this
God.
sounds better. Praise God.
Yes, sir.
I think what we can do at
I
this
think what we can do
juncture
at this
is we're
juncture
trying to
is
lay this
we're trying to
backdrop
lay the
of,
background
for a forefront
for
for this reading of this chapter
reading
of
of this
28.
chapter 28.
We all know
We all
the
know
people
the
in this
people
hemisphere.
in this
We all know how
hemisphere.
we got
We
here.
all know how we got it.
We came here on slave
We
ships,
gave
our
it
forefathers did,
our forefathers,
and they
and they
were introduced
were introduced
to
to
some of the worst
some of the worst
inhumane treatment
inhumane
that
treatment
other men
that
could
other
devise
men
to
could
treat
devise
other
to
human
treat
beings.
other human beings. And
But praise Yah,
but praise God,
they were strong
they were
because we're
strong
here, right?
because we're here, right?
But why
Correct.
have we gone
Turn
through
your
these
volume down a
things?
little, Elder. Turn your volume down a little if you can, Elder.
Okay, I'm gonna try that.
Okay,
Getting a little echo. But keep talking. I'm sorry.
But the question
but
is, can you
the
hear me?
question is,
Yes, sir.
The question is,
question is,
why do
why
and a lot of black people
and
ask
a lot
this
of black
question.
people
I
ask
ask
this question.
myself this
I
question. Why did we
why we
why
why
all this stuff happen to
why this
us?
stuff happen to us?
Hmm.
You know,
You know,
why all these bad
why
things? Why
bad
did it happen
things?
to our
Why it
people
happened to our people
in the past?
in the
And
past?
why are we still
And
going
why
through
we still going through
systemic
systemic
oppression today
oppression
in
today
America,
in America,
in the Caribbean,
in
in
the
South
Caribbean,
America,
South
parts
America,
of Africa,
parts of Africa,
in other parts
and other
of
parts
our people that in
of our
Iraq, our
people
people in
in Iraq,
Turkey,
our people in
people in
Turkey,
Pakistan,
people in
people that in
Pakistan,
India,
people in India.
everywhere
Everywhere
this
this
people were
this
scattered,
people were scattered,
affliction and
afflicted,
pain
pain
were poured upon them.
poured upon
Even
them.
to this
Even
day,
to this
just
day,
by having
just
bad,
by having
dark
that
skin,
dark skin,
it puts that they want to
it
paint that
puts
as
the
the
it want to
badge of
paint that as a
slavery,
badge
or
of
the
slavery,
it isn't the
or
badge of
it is
slavery,
a
the
badge
badge
of
of
slavery, badge
inferiority.
of inferiority.
You got this black skin, this
You got
dark
this
skin,
black kid, this
then
dark
you
skin,
should be
then
treated
you should be treated
badly by other
bad
nations
by the state
in
Hmm.
general.
in
But
general.
we know it's not all about
But we know
skin,
it's not all about skin,
it's about
it's
nationality,
about nationality.
Hmm. Correct.
correct?
Correct?
Correct. So y'all doesn't deal with colors. He deals with nations.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Uriah?
You're right.
I don't hear you. I
I
don't
don't
hear
Oh,
anybody.
I don't hear spot.
yeah, I can hear
Yeah,
clearly. I just mute my mic,
I can feel my mic. Yeah.
but I can hear you.
But I can't hear.
Hello? Okay.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Something is.
Praise yeah.
All right, Elder. Let's go ahead and transition into our video in the meantime.
Yeah.
We got a little, let me see, Elder just dropped out. His connection was kind of poor. We were getting a lot of feedback, a little echo in the background.
Okay.
Let's see how he is when he comes back here.
You got all those videos uploaded in the system?
Yes, sir. They're ready to go.
Okay.
We can
Yeah,
start.
go ahead and
We can start reading, or we can start with the video, if you want,
Mm-hmm.
whichever you prefer. Here. We can begin with the video, or we can begin with
You can begin with the videos.
Yeah. All right. All right, this first video is on the transatlantic slave trade. And this is for informational purposes, educational purposes, and no copyright infringement. All right, here we are.
Praise that. That's what my elder said. You know, these videos are for educational purposes.
But one institution stands out for both its global scale and its lasting legacy.
Numbers involved in the Atlantic.
Slavery, the treatment of human beings as property, deprived of personal rights, has occurred in many forms throughout the world. But one institution stands out for both its global scale and its lasting legacy.
Numbers involved in the Atlantic slave trade are truly staggering. From 1500 to 1880 CE, somewhere between 10 and 12 million African slaves were forcibly moved from Africa to the Americas, and about 15% of those people died during the journey.
The majority of enslaved Africans were taken from 6 primary regions: Senegambia, Sierra Leone in the Windward Coast, the Gold Coast, Divided Benin, Divided Biafra, and West Central Africa, also known as Congo and Angola. An estimated 12.4 million people were loaded onto slave ships and carried through what became known as the Middle Passage, which moved across the Atlantic and included many different destinations.
Once in the Americas, the surviving slaves were sold at a market very similar to the way cattle would be sold. After purchase, slave owners would often brand their new possession on the cheeks, again, just as they would do with cattle. The lives of slaves were dominated by work and terror.
The idea that I am not human, that I have no soul, that I am a beast. Brand me, burn me, whatever, and no recourse, nothing.
The history of humanity is filled with oppression, dominance, war, and slavery. Since the beginning of time, people in different parts of the world have forced their fellow humans into slavery. The tale of the Atlantic slave trade is the history of millions of Africans who were forced out of their communities by European slave traders and shipped across the Atlantic in conditions of great cruelty. Portugal and Spain started conquering and establishing colonies in the New World in the early 1500s. They forcefully made the Indians work their plantations. However, European diseases and the violence of conquest led to the death of many of the Indian slaves. This led to a labor shortage in Europe and made the Europeans look towards Africa for a solution. As voyages to Africa progressed, and with many expeditions by Portuguese and Spanish explorers, Africa became a major source of supply of slaves to Europe. in the Spanish West Indies, as well as the Portuguese colonies in Brazil. The Indian slaves were gradually replaced by Africans. These Africans were stripped of their identity and occupation. To refer to them as just slaves is incorrect, because before being captured by the European, many of them were farmers, merchants, soldiers, musicians, goldsmiths, blacksmiths, and many more. They were husbands, fathers, wives, children, and mothers. They had origins and heritage, but when the Europeans came and took over their communities, they became captives and had to be boarded on large ships and taken to Europe. The European slavers dispersed them across the Americas and different parts of Europe. They were forced to lead lives under terrible conditions and face severe labor conditions. They were stripped and flogged and forced to work very long hours, often under terrible weather and health conditions. The transatlantic slave trade transported between 10 million and 12 million enslaved black Africans across the Atlantic Ocean to the Americas. You might have heard of the triangular trade, right? And how Africa was a major part of this trade, although suffering economically, while the other two parts that made up the triangle enjoyed huge economic benefits. We'll get to that shortly. The first slave voyage from Africa to the Americas is believed to have sailed in 1526, but even before this period, Africans were bought as slaves directly from Europe. Society and introduced pagan and non-Christian practices to the country. However, over the years, due to economic reasons, there was a U-turn in that decision, and on August 18, 1518, King Charles V granted a charter to Lorenzo de Goravade to transport 4,000 slaves directly from Africa to the Spanish-American colonies. Over time, King Charles changed the law established by his grandparents and then permitted slaves to be brought into Spanish colonies in America from Africa on the condition that they would be converted to Christianity during their voyage across the Atlantic Ocean. With this new decree in place, there was an explosion in the number of slaves moved from Africa to America. There was an immediate expansion of the slave trade in the Western Hemisphere. European slave traders gathered and imprisoned the enslaved at forts on the African coast, and then brought them to the Americas. Generally, the European slave traders did not participate in the raids because their life expectancy in sub-Saharan Africa was less than a year due to the widespread malaria infection.
What happens when the prostate enlarges and the urine channel gets tight? You have an enlarged prostate. Do this 5-second Japanese morning ritual to shrink it almost immediately. If you've
So the majority of people that were transported in the transatlantic slave trade were people from Central and West Africa that were captured by other West Africans and sold to the Western European slave traders. The transatlantic slave trade was essential to the whole economics of the triangular trade route, and European colonies in America needed the supply of slaves for their plantations. Speaking of essential, it's essential for you to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. They don't want us sharing stories like this, but we're going to continue anyway with your support. The triangular trade. Now, let's dive a little deeper into what the triangular trade route was all about. The triangular trade route is simply the trade structure that operated across the Atlantic region. This triangular trade route across the Atlantic took goods from Europe to Africa. Some of the goods taken to Africa include arms, textiles, and wine. On the other side of the triangle was the movement of African slaves to the Americas and the West Indies. The last side of the triangle was the movement of raw materials such as sugar, coffee, tobacco, rice, and cotton produced on American plantations back to Europe. The triangle involved 3 continents, with Europe providing the capital, Africa providing the labor, and America providing the land and resources. There was always a supply to the European market. The story of the transatlantic slave trade involves the story of all people in the 3 continents, but most importantly, those involved in the Middle Passage voyage. The trade route that transported slaves is known as the Middle Passage. The voyage is often marked with a lot of difficulties and even death. Depending on the weather, the voyage could take about 3 to 6 months. The passage was so brutal that the ships not only lost the people being transported as slaves, but in some cases, The crew also lost their lives. The mortality rate for sailors on slave ships was approximately 20%. The ships had a particular design and varied in size and passenger capacity. The conditions of these ships were inhumane. The African slaves were locked up below the deck in cramped quarters and only had a little opportunity to be out in the sunlight, and they were forced to carry out certain enforced exercises in the form of dancing to ensure that they were healthy and in good posture when they get to Europe. Inside of these decks was sticky and filled with the stench of dirt, feces, and urine. Research published in 1794 estimated that a man inside the deck had just a space of 6 feet by 1 foot 4 inches, and a woman had 5 feet by 1 foot 4 inches. The girls had 4 feet 6 inches by 1 foot. The air inside the deck was hot, stale, and filled with the incessant smell of dirt and human excreta. The slaves suffered from starvation and thirst, and only had 24 ounces of water every day, i.e. the equivalent of 2 12-ounce soda cans of fluid per day. Their major food was horse beans and rice. The captives were packed tightly in tiers below decks and were chained together, hands and feet. The voyage was characterized by many difficulties, and the captives were faced with issues that included epidemic diseases and attacks by pirates. They also experienced physical, sexual, and psychological abuse by slave traders and crewmen. An estimate by historians put it that between 15 and 25% of the enslaved Africans bound for the Americas died during this voyage. The conditions were so severe that only a tiny percentage of the Africans transported in the slave trade came directly to North America. Just about 4% of the total Africans transported, not more than 400,000, arrived in North America directly. A vast majority of the slaves were sent to the Caribbean and South America, and almost half of the slaves that were captured and transported out from Africa, totaling about 5 million, were sent to Brazil. I know you will be wondering how thousands of slaves couldn't overpower hundreds of crewmen. Well, there was one popular situation where African slave trades revolted and took over their ships. The detail of this story is as chilling as it is fascinating. We will get to that shortly, but keep in mind that the slave traders were armed and typically had the slaves in chains before transporting them. Anyways, let's finish up on the journey and the economics of the transatlantic slave trade. And while we may think that all slaves transported out of Africa were through the transatlantic route, that is not entirely true. The transatlantic slave only made up for half of the total slaves traded and transported out of Africa. It is reported that from AD 650 to 1900, Islamic traders were also exporting slaves out of Africa and sent out a total of 10 million slaves to Arabia, Yemen, Iran, India, and Iraq. The slaves were transported across the Sahara Desert, the Red Sea, and the Indian Ocean, while some slaves were also enslaved but remained in Africa. Many of the slaves captured and transported in the transatlantic slave trade were taken from the region bordering the Gulf of Guinea. The slave activities in this region were excessive, that the section of the African coast in countries like Togo, Benin, and Nigeria was even referred to as the Slave Coast. A majority of the slaves were taken from West Central Africa. In the early stages of the transatlantic slave trade, the Portuguese generally bought Africans who were captured as slaves during tribal wars. But as the demand for slaves increased, the Portuguese began to enter the interior of Africa to forcibly take captives. In the 1690s, the number of people taken out of Africa yearly reached about 30,000, and a century later, the number grew to about 85,000 per year. During the 1700 and 1850, it was estimated that more than 8 out of 10 Africans were forced into the slave trade, successfully crossed the Atlantic. In the period between 1821 and 1830, about 80,000 people were leaving Africa yearly, and within the next 20 years, before the abolition of slave trade, over 1 million more Africans were sent across the Atlantic to America. By 1820, almost 4 Africans for every 1 European had been transported across the Atlantic, and 4 out of 5 women who crossed the Atlantic were from Africa. The majority of enslaved Africans brought to British North America arrived between 1720 and 1780. The Africans who were sent to Brazil were mostly from Angola, and those who were transported to North America, including the Caribbean, were taken mainly from West Africa. Although just about 6% of African captives were sent to British North America in 1825, the US population included about 1/4 of the people of African descent in the Western Hemisphere. Interestingly, the condition of slavery in America was totally different from that in the US. But before we delve into these mind-boggling details, let's talk about the revolt of 1839. Remember, I mentioned this earlier. In 1839, slave traders were once again hoping to get another shipment of slaves across the Atlantic, but unlike previous voyages, they were not ready for the surprise this particular voyage would be bringing their way. The slave ship, named Amistad, had about 100 slaves on board. As the ship moved near the coast of Cuba, the unwilling passengers of the ship, who were recently abducted from Africa, numbering about 53, revolted aggressively. The revolters were led by Joseph Sink. They killed the captain and cook, and only spared the life of the Spanish navigator so that he can sail them home back to Sierra Leone. However, the navigator managed to sail the Amistad northward. 2 months later, the US Navy intercepted and seized the ship off Long Island, New York. The ship was towed to New London, Connecticut, and the mutineers were held in jail in New Haven, Connecticut. This event had significant political and legal repercussions in the American abolition movement. At that time, the Spanish embassy demanded that the African slaves are returned to Cuba, and this led to the 1840 trial in Hartford, Connecticut federal court. New England abolitionist Louis Tappan was successful in drawing public sympathy to the Africans and was able to battle it with the pro-slavery US government. However, the US president at the time, Martin Van Buren, ordered a Navy ship sent to Connecticut to return the Africans to Cuba immediately after the trial. The interesting part of this incident was the legal proceeding that ensued. The prosecutors argued that as slaves, the mutineers were subject to the laws governing conduct between slaves and their masters. And this is where it gets interesting. The trial testimony showed that while slavery was legal in Cuba, the importation of slaves from Africa was not. The judge therefore ruled that the Africans were not merchandise, but were victims of kidnapping, and so had the right to escape their captors in any way they could. When the US government appealed the case before the US Supreme Court, the following year, former President John Quincy Adams was able to win the court ruling in favor of the Amistad rebels. The Supreme Court upheld the judgment of the lower court through contributions from private and missionary societies. The 35 surviving Africans secured a passage home. They arrived in Sierra Leone in January 1842 alongside 5 missionaries and teachers who later founded a Christian mission in the country. While we could definitely blame the Europeans for the activities of the Atlantic slave trade, Africans were also involved in slave trade activities. Africans were involved in kidnapping adults and stealing children for the purpose of selling them. They used European intermediaries or agents to sell off these captives in exchange for merchandise or arms. In most cases, those sold into slavery were usually from a different ethnic group than those who captured them, and it didn't matter if they were enemies or indigenous of a neighboring village. The captive slaves were stripped of any identity they had and simply referred to as other. They were not seen as part of the people of the ethnic group or tribe. Also, while African kings were very much interested in protecting their villages, in some instances, thieves and criminals were sold out into slavery as a way to get rid of them. Many other slaves were gotten through raids at gunpoint, which were organized by different ethnic groups, and in some instances, as a joint venture with the Europeans. Also recorded in the book, Daughters of the Trade, Atlantic Slavers and Interracial Marriage on the Gold Coast, the author, Pernille Ibsen, shared that Africans on the Gold Coast, which is present-day Ghana, also participated in the slave trade through intermarriage.
A house or a laptop? Which one do you think is worth more? Well, definitely not the house, because it not only...
The term used was casare, which gets its origins from Portuguese and means to marry. Casare was used to form political bonds and economic connections between the slave traders and the Europeans. In the initial stages of slave trade, it was common practice for the powerful West African families to marry off their women to the European traders in alliance and to further enforce the syndicate. While the marriages had to be performed based on African customs, the Europeans offered no objection, as they were fully aware of how vital these connections were to the success of their businesses. In the initial stages, we may argue that Africans had no idea of the exact condition of the slave trade and the experience of those sold into the slave trade. However, according to Robin Law, there is a possibility that the royal elites of the Dahomey Kingdom must have had an informed understanding of the fates of the Africans sold into slavery. This is because the King of Dahomey sent diplomats to Brazil and Portugal who returned with information about their trips. Also, some of the elites of Dahomey had experienced slavery in America before returning home. So the only opposition the kingdom of Dahomey had against slavery was the law that prohibited the enslavement of a fellow Dahomean. Anyone caught doing this faced the death penalty, and while the kingdom was against this, they had no issue with the institution of slavery. The case was different on the Gold Coast, which is present-day Ghana. Here, elites sent their kids to learn about the slave trade from the Europeans by sailing with them and living inside their forts. Some even sent their children to Europe and America to be educated. Elites on the Gold Coast also had agreements with the Dutch and British governments to rescue some of their friends who were tricked into slavery in America. However, a common assumption by many Africans who were not aware of the true purpose of the Atlantic slave trade was that the Europeans were cannibals who planned on cooking and eating their captives. This rumor even made it more distressing for the captives who were locked in ships sailing to Europe. The transatlantic slave trade led to an uncountable loss of lives for both captives in and outside America. A BBC report indicated that more than 1 million people are thought to have died during their transport to the New World. More died soon after their arrival due to terrible health conditions, although the number of slaves that died when bought as slaves is unclear. One thing we are sure of is that this number may exceed the number of those that survived to be enslaved. The Atlantic slave trade led to the destruction of lives and cultures. It is estimated that about 12 million slaves entered the Atlantic trade between the 16th and 19th centuries, and about 1.5 million died on board slave ships. And apart from those who died in the Middle Passage, it is also estimated that many Africans were killed during the slave raids and wars in Africa. Canadian scholar Adam Jones has characterized the deaths of millions of Africans in this period as a genocide. He referred to it as one of the worst holocausts in human history. Many believed that these deaths were not intentional and it was in the slave owner's interest to keep slaves alive and not exterminate them. Jones argues that the killing and destruction were intentional, whatever the incentives to preserve survivors of the Atlantic Passage for labor exploitation. To revisit the issue of intent already touched on, if an institution is deliberately maintained and expanded by discernible agents, though all are aware of the hecatombs of casualties it is inflicting on a definable human group, then why should this not qualify as genocide? Saidiya Hartman, an American writer and academic focusing on African American studies, argues that the deaths of enslaved people were incidental to the acquisition of profit and the rise of capitalism. She argues that death wasn't a goal of its own, but just a byproduct of commerce, which has the lasting effect of making negligible all the millions of lives lost. Incidental death occurs when life has no normative value, when no humans are involved, when the population is, in effect, seen as already dead. Saidiya Hartman goes on to say that although unlike the concentration camp or the Gulag, the Atlantic slave trade also led to the millions of corpses. In this case, extermination was not the major goal. It was a major corollary to the making of commodities. Who do we blame? Well, we could blame the Germans for the genocide attempt on the Jews. Who do we blame for the slave trade? 7 nations were actively involved in the activities of the slave trade and took most of the slaves to their colonies in the New World. We have the Portuguese, the British, the French, the Spanish, the Dutch, the Americans, and the Danish. The major sources of slaves include Angola Coast, Bight of Benin, Bight of Biafra, Gold Coast, Senegambia, Southeast Africa, and Indian Ocean Islands, Sierra Leone, and Windward Coast. The presence of European slavers also affected how the legal code in Africa worked. According to Kamani Nahusi, many African societies changed the punishment for certain crimes and the way they responded to certain offenders.
My name is Jim Rickards. I'm a former advisor to the CIA, Department of Defense, and the White House.
Some crimes, which were traditionally punishable by some other form of punishment, became punishable by enslavement, and offenders were now sold to slave traders. David Stannard, the author of American Holocaust, showed in his book that 50% of African deaths occurred in Africa as a result of wars between native kingdoms, which produced the majority of slaves. The practice of enslaving enemy combatants and their villages was widely practiced in West Africa. Indeed, the slave trade was largely a byproduct of tribal and state warfare. By selling off captives, they were also able to finance future warfare and also remove potential dissidents after victory. However, some of the African nations, such as Igala, Kabu, Bono State, Oyo, Ashanti, Dahomey, and the Oro Confederacy, were more brutal in this practice. Truly, Africans were fully involved in the slave trade and even aided it in many ways. But we can't take away the fact that the Europeans provided the incentives that made this activity thrive. In one of the letters written by Menicongo Nzinga Mbemba Afonso to the King João III of Portugal, he writes to the king requesting that the king stop sending merchandise that is fueling the war between the different tribes. He begs the king to stop sending merchandise and rather send more missionaries. In one of his letters, he writes, "Each day the traders are kidnapping our people, children of this country, sons of our nobles and vassals, even people of our own family. This corruption and depravity are so widespread that our land is entirely depopulated. We need in this kingdom only priests and school teachers and no merchandise, unless it is wine and flour for mass. It is our wish that this kingdom is not a place for the trade or transport of slaves. Many of our subjects eagerly lust over Portuguese merchandise that your subjects have brought into our domains. To satisfy this inordinate appetite, they seize many of our black free subjects. They sell them, after having taken these prisoners to the coast, secretly or at night. As soon as the captives are in the hands of white men, they are branded with a red-hot iron." Despite the vast consequences of the transatlantic slave trade, there have been worldwide apologies from different nations that benefited and grew their economy based on labor from the slave trade. In 1998, UNESCO designated 23 August as International Day for the remembrance of the slave trade and its abolition. This led to several other events that recognized the adverse effects of slavery on the African continent. In 2001, during the World Conference Against Racism in Durban, South Africa, African nations demanded a clear apology for slavery from the former slave trading countries. Some nations were ready to express an apology. However, the opposing countries, majorly the United Kingdom, Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, and the United States, blocked any attempt to do so. The reason for this opposition by these countries could be due to concerns that accepting their involvement in slavery would also require that they make monetary compensations to the affected African nations. Since 2009, there has been a continuous effort by the UN to create the UN Slavery Memorial as a permanent remembrance of the victims of the Atlantic slave trade. This video is crazy, but if you want to learn some more Black history that they never taught us in school, click the link in the screen. It's a story I'm sure you don't want to miss. We'll see you over there.
You guys see this amazing truck? My car insurance company was totally ripping me off for it until I found this. All right, guys, so check this out. $178 was what I was paying for my previous policy.
Take place with our people. Make sure you can hear some history as to what
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, my deacon. Yeah, there's no sound from you, my deacon.
all right, my love.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but the sound quality is no good. Can you hear me good? I'm breaking up?
No, you sound good there, though.
I sound good?
I think the feedback is coming on my end.
Yeah. So you need to oh, you want to proceed? Okay. Shabbat Shalom. I hope I'm coming much better right now.
All right, special man.
Yeah. Now let's pick it up at the book in Deuteronomy chapter. You maybe need to go out and come back in. You want to go back out and come back in? Yeah, forgive us for I know the devil is interfering with this with the server. Um, we're gonna make sure if we have to redo the class or redo the class and make sure we keep that devil away out of the but I pray Yahweh, handle, everything in time, for us to be blessed, with everything. Okay. I'm gonna pick it up on that's an informative video that my deacon just played. And we pray, the Most High open your ears to allow all of us to receive something from that informative video. And we thank Yahweh for everything. And that's what happened to our forefathers that was put into that boat or the ship, hopping along the Atlantic trade slave. But again, there was another slave trade, which is the Arab, whatever how you want to pronounce it. But that slave trade was like millions and millions of our people were killed.
Correct.
Some estimate anywhere between 20 to 200 millions of our people were killed in that slave trade. And
That's
and I
right.
think that slave trade was from Babylon to Timbuktu. What were you saying, Madikin? Go ahead,
Yeah,
Madikin.
I'm back. I hope our audio is clear. I just wanted to apologize for our viewers. Forgive us for the technical issues. We were trying to display this video, and I think it came across clear after the about 5 minutes, but we did have some little hiccups between our audio and stuff like that. So forgive us.
Yeah, in life, you can't go through life so smooth, but you're gonna have hiccup in every system. So, we ask again, as what the deacon said, for your forgiveness. Yeah, we're gonna let it work out, If not,
And we're gonna redo this class.
we're gonna redo the class because there's a lot more information need to be given to the public, or the public need to be aware of. And sometimes watching this video, sometimes you'll say to yourself, why did God allow this, to happen to his people, the closest nation to him? What's going on? But you will see when we dip into this book, the book of Deuteronomy, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1 and see what we can discuss today. And because we all wonder why this have to happen to us. And I run into two sisters. I think they were twin. And they said, "Oh man, do you love the Messiah?" And he was saying, "Do you love JC?" I turned to them and I said, "Hey, do you think JC loved us? And if you think he loved us, why he allow us to get into the slave trades into the slave trade whatever scenario? Why we have to go on that boat? Couldn't we just stay in the land and worship, the true Elohim?" But there's a reason behind that. Yes, we know that the father loveth his son, and he's going to chastise his son if the son refuse, to do his instruction.
Correct.
And if that son don't return, to the father, that son is going to be like a bastard. They don't care anything about that son. So that's one of the reasons, but there are several reasons why, it could be like for testing our faith too. See if we're going to turn away from, the Creator's word that He already implanted in our forefathers. So, our forefathers failed on the job, so no, we cannot fail, on this job because the time frame is coming to an end.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, the time, the beginning of the end is start, in bold letters across the sky. Just open your eyes and you will see what's going on. Because everything that is written in this book gonna come to pass.
That's
Believe it
right.
or not, it's gonna come to pass. And we are gonna go back to take back that throne. Yeah, we're gonna be
Yeah.
the rulers. But it's not. It's gonna be the kingdom of heaven going to be ruled with righteousness. What is righteousness?
Yahweh.
Righteousness. Thank you, my deacon. Righteous word. But anyway, do you want to touch on the book of Deuteronomy 28 and see where we can link
Yes,
it
sir.
to the videos that we just seen, and we can go from there.
All right. We're going to pick this up in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1.
And you can stop and break in at any time if you have any point you want to make. Okay, my deacon.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're dealing with this, the way this class, the way it breaks up when you're in Deuteronomy, the first 14 verses deal with the blessings that
Yep,
were going to be put upon the children of Israel. So
that's
this is what
right.
we're going to be covering, verses 1 through 14 is the blessings. The remaining verses from 15 down to 68 cover the curses that would be put upon the children of Israel or that would befall them for their disobedience. So we know that it was already prophesied to take place. So let's pick up the blessings here. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that Yahweh thy Elohim will set thee on high above all nations of the earth,
Mm-hmm.
and all blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim. Blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed shalt thou be in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of the ground, and the fruit of thy cattle, the increase of thy kine, and the flocks of thy sheep. Blessed shall be thy basket and thy store. Blessed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shalt thou be when thou goest out. And Yahweh shall cause thy enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way, and flee before thee 7 ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yahweh shall send the blessings upon thee in thy storehouses, and in all that thou settest thy hand unto. And he shall bless thee in the land which Yahweh thy Elohim giveth thee.
That's right.
Verse 9. Yahweh shall establish thee a holy people unto himself, as he has sworn unto thee, if thou shalt keep the commandments of Yahweh thy Elohim, and walk in his ways. So we see that this covenant is conditional.
That's right.
He keeps the stipulation is, yeah, well, I'll bless you if you keep the commandments. But if you don't keep the commandments, then we know that there's a cause and effect now.
My deacon, go ahead and read verse 1. Reread verse 1 again for me, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that Yahweh thy Elohim will set thee on high above all nations of the earth.
Okay, now look on yourself. Look on yourself and see what's going on now. And if we say we are the descendant of our forefathers, are we in a blessing situation right now? You have to
No,
ask
sir.
yourself that question. What's going on? As what my deacon said, this is a conditional scenario that he have put forth upon his people. And if we claim that we are the children of Israel, then we are the blessing. We are not, because we surely are at the bottom of I call it the totem pole. We are at the bottom. So what we need to do in order to receive this blessing, the blessing that my deacon has read so far, what we need to do, then you have to go back to verse 1. You have to hearken unto his word diligently. You have to do everything he commands you to do. And if not, we're going to continue. We're going to continue reading. If you have something to add more onto that, and to see the rest of the blessing that he's going to bestow upon us if we keep these commandments. Go ahead, Mike.
And these blessings, it goes all the way back to Father Abraham.
That's right.
Because Abraham was promised that he would be blessed. And so it goes down from the things that were passed unto Abraham and his son Isaac and to his son Jacob, which passed on to the children. So these blessings that we're reading is the fulfillment of all of those blessings being passed down and actually now being enjoined unto the nation if they hearken to the voice of Yahweh, they are Elohim. We're in Deuteronomy chapter 28.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. And we know that Abraham was a faithful servant unto the Most High. He taught is also, because he was a disciplined leader. How to obey Yahweh. He followed his instruction. He followed the law.
That's right.
How we know that the law was always, in the earth, even though, we receive it at the time, the written form from the Most High. He have imputed those righteousness, those law into our forefathers. So we know what righteousness from the get-go, even from Adam. Because Adam was a righteous man. Adam must have been doing things to please his Elohim. So Adam knew the law. He knew what right and wrong was. Okay? You have to know. I mean, look at it, my deacon. Yahweh created him from the dust. You have to impute something in Adam. Righteousness is instruction.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
The law was in the earth. The law has always been. Yeah.
Always.
The law is
always. Continue, my deacon.
Yes, sir. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 10. And all the people of the earth shall see that thou art called by the name of Yahweh, and they shall be afraid of thee. And Yahweh shall make thee plenteous in goods, in the fruit of thy body, and in the fruit of thy cattle, and in the fruit of thy ground, in the land which Yahweh sware unto thy fathers to give thee.
Yeah, stick up in there, my deacon. And if we look back into history, where I'm looking at verse 7, and Yahweh shall cause thine enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way and flee before thee 7 ways. If we look back in history and look back, especially our great, our second commander in chief, the King David, we know Yahweh blessed that brother so much. We can see when he went back into the land, that land was pretty much in rest, especially in Shlomo's time, his son times. No enemies really come up against. So we were at peace, just for that particular time in history. But after that, our people, they start following the way of the Edens.
The kingdom was divided.
That's
right.
The
rest of the promise had to be fulfilled. Yes,
That's
sir.
right.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
This was the breaking up of the nation.
That's right.
Like
breaking
we read
up of our nation, the nation of Israel.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's right, my deacon. Thank you.
Praise Yah. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 12. Yahweh shall open unto thee his good treasure, the heaven to give the rain unto thy land in his season, and to bless all the work of thy hand. And thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow. So we would be the bankers.
That's right.
Mm.
That's right. And if you look back in the time of Josiah,
Mm-hmm.
when he found the commandment, man, Yahweh blessed them so much with the animal sacrifice. It was like thousands and thousands
Mm-hmm.
giving back to Yahweh.
Correct. For they had lost the book of the law. Imagine that. You see, Yahweh caused these things to happen though, and He allowed them to find it, and then they were reunited back unto Yah, which is really like the same thing that's happening now.
Yeah.
So it's like we found the law. Yahweh, it wasn't hidden. Yahweh called, and now He's allowing us to see that. Look, the law has always been here. I just didn't allow you to see it at that time. But now He's calling us back, the same way like He woke up our fathers and allowed them to find the book of the law, and
That's right.
And He wanted to repent based off of the things that were written. Once they read these things, He said, "Man, great is the judgment on our people." I'm paraphrasing, because they haven't kept these words, And so, yeah, praise Yah. Yahweh truly did bless him.
Yeah, surely Yahweh bless us, man. But it's like a cycle our people have to go through. Because things don't really stay with us. It stay with us for a time T, but then it's just vanish away. Because what happens when you're not teaching your children, and your children are not teaching their children after you, at some point, the law is gonna vanish. It's gonna vanish.
Correct.
Away from the children of Israel, causing us to walk contrary to the commandment that Yahweh gave us.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, my deacon.
Yes, sir. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 13. And Yahweh shall make thee the head, and not the tail, and thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. If that thou hearken unto the commandments of Yahweh thy Elohim, which I command thee this day, to observe and to do them.
That's right.
And thou, yes, sir. And thou shalt not go aside from any of the words which I command thee this day, to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods, to serve them.
Praise Yah. So those are the blessing that Yahweh is gonna cause to open up. Because Yahweh was everything to us. But our forefathers didn't get that totally right. That he was our protector and still our defender. He also is our provider.
That's right.
And our healing source also. Yahweh is the one that was righteous. So if these things is not happening to us, it must be something that we are doing wrong. So we need to change our ways.
That's right.
And that goes for all of us, every one of us, because we know we fall short. Every one of us falls short of the glory of the Most High.
You're so right. We see that when verse 13 it says, Yahweh shall make thee the head and not the tail, and thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath, if that thou hearken unto the commandments of Yahweh thy Elohim. So we see that we're in the opposite condition now today. And we're going to cover that in the curses, the preceding verses. But we're going to find out that because of our disobedience and because of the things that our fathers, because of what was written, because these things had to pass, now look at our condition as a people. And this is our identification, as this title is called, the blessings and the curses. So we just covered the blessings. And we're about to read the curses. Identification of a people, or identification of Israel.
So
because
even
these
though
curses,
it's something that we disobey, and these are warning that Moshe is warning the people. The
correct.
instruction of warning the people what's going to happen to them if they refuse from doing the thing that Yahweh command them to do.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And every word came to pass. We're in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shall thou be in the city, and cursed shall thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. I'm sorry. Verse 17. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. Cursed shall thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shall thou be when thou goest out. Yahweh shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke in all that thou settest thy hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me. Yahweh shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee, until he has consumed thee from off the land, whither thou goest to possess it. So we see that these prophecies were not only dealing with the time that we were in the land, but there was also a future aspect of this prophecy. So you had near and far prophecies being fulfilled or being written down, because
That's right.
he's telling them that these things are going to partake you or befall you when you're in the land.
Okay.
Some of these things are going to happen to our fathers when they're in the land, and then some of these things fall upon their children after they're dispersed out in the land, and we're gonna cover that.
That's
so these
right.
are near and far prophecies. Yes, sir.
And there's a little distraction coming from my end. So I don't know if you can hear it. A little feedback coming from my end.
Yeah, and some more feedback now. Yeah, let me see.
Yeah, but you can go ahead because you're coming much clearer more than myself.
All right.
I don't know. We haven't do any.
Turn your volume down on your device a little bit though.
Yeah, already done that.
Okay. All right. We're in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 21. Yahweh shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee, until he have consumed thee from off the land whither thou goest to possess it. Yahweh shall smite thee with a consumption, and with a fever, and with an inflammation, and with an extreme burning, and with the sword, and with blasting, and with mildew, and they shall pursue thee until thou perish. And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron. Yahweh shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust. From heaven it shall come down upon thee until thou be destroyed. Yahweh shall cause thee to be smitten before thy enemies. Thou shalt go one way against them. Thou shalt go out rather one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed into all kingdoms of the earth.
Yeah,
So this
a question here, my deacon.
Yes, sir.
You've been to especially the hospital in Atlanta, the major ones.
Yes, sir.
When you go there, who do you see there? Which nation of people do you see there?
Oh, you say our people. We definitely see our people. Yeah. I see people of all nations, but I see a lot of our people. Yes, sir.
That's right. It seems like they're using our people for experiment. All these, I mean, why there's so much of our people are suffering? So these, even though these are identified terms, are things in the Bible, statement in the Bible, we have to look in them. We have to think twice. What can we do to change all these things? So instead of 70, 80% of us is going to the hospital or going through, all these sickness, which, we need the healing. We need to change our ways.
Correct. We have it all falls back to the law.
That's right.
It all falls back to the law. Because we have a dietary law that tells us what we're supposed to eat and things that we shouldn't eat. And our people, these curses have fallen upon us because we've rejected Yahweh's law completely. And our people are ignorant to Yahweh's law because of the curse. The curse of blindness is upon us.
That's
so
right.
The lack of understanding of who we are as a people, and therefore the requirements and what it is that we're supposed to be doing. Well, this is part of the issue that we're going through. This curse of blindness, and this is what we're reading. These curses had to come to pass, and because of that, this blindness is upon our people. So we have to fulfill this which is written, but it's a tragedy to see. Truly,
you're so right. You said requirement, and building a house, it need a firm foundation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you do not have a firm foundation, that building is going to crumble at some point. So you have to build, your foundation upon things that are permanent, which are spiritual. You see what I'm saying? So we have to change. We're not talking about only the dietary law. That's the reason why when we start this body, we start from the beginning of the book. And we start building our foundation. So, when we finish the law books, which has been given to the Moshe, then we can, not to say go outside, but then we can see what we can apply all these instructions that we have received from this book, from this law book, and to put it or insert it into our lives.
Correct.
So we can build a better foundation for everyone, even for our enemy.
Go
ahead, Madika.
Yes, sir. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 27. Verse 26. And thy carcass shall be meat unto all fowls of the air, and unto the beasts of the earth, and no man shall fray them away. So now we see that our people were lynched. It was a practice to hang our people upon trees.
That's right.
And no one would put the animals away. And if the wild beast came and devoured us, so be it. So our people fulfilled these curses we see in all the lands that we've been scattered to, not only in the Americas.
That's right. And if our people fulfill all these curses, there have to be a time when all these things is going to cease. And it's not just going to cease just like that. You have to change your ways.
Correct.
Or you treat your brother. But first of all, you treat your Elohim, or you appear before your Elohim, or you serve your Elohim. And I said it goes for all of us.
That's right. Yes, sir. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 27. Yahweh will smite thee with the botch of Egypt, and with the emerods, and with the scab, and with the itch, whereof thou canst not be healed. Yahweh shall smite thee with madness, and blindness, and astonishment of heart. And thou shalt grope at noonday, as the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways. And thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and thou shalt not gather the grapes thereof.
So true.
That's right. Did we fulfill these things? Or who did
Man,
these things fall?
to the very T.
See,
To the very
we know
T.
that during the slavery time, the master would have his way.
That's
He
right.
did as he pleased. And if a man had a wife and the man and the slave master said he wanted to take it, well, that's what he did. And the man couldn't do nothing about it. He was powerless.
That's right.
But
Look
this is
how many houses we have built so far, but we don't get a chance to for one of them to be to be our house.
Hmm. We understand that this whole land was built on the backs of the slaves.
That's
But
right.
who has reaped the rewards? But that was a prophecy that had to come to pass. You see, yeah. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 31. Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Thy sheep shall be given unto thine enemies, thou shalt have none to rescue them. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes rather shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thy hand. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always. So verse 32 talks about your sons and your daughters being given unto another people. And we understand that during times of slavery, they would use the auction blocks to sell off our people. And they would take the mother and sell the mother away. May take the child, the son or the daughter, and take the father and sell them all to different slave masters or to different plantations, so as to keep them divided, so that they wouldn't be able to learn their history. But
That's
these
so
things
true.
were
That's
prophesied
so true,
to
my
take
deacon.
place. So this is another identifying marker. The blessings of curses, identification of Israel. See. So what we ask now, when we go back, we got some more videos that we're going to play, and we're going to cover this more in detail, as we are going to redo this class, y'all will, because it's a lot more information that we want to bring out. But the question is, who else has these things befallen as a people? What other nation on the face of the earth has these things taken place to? Can we identify any other people that these curses are upon? And if not, then who are these people that we're speaking of? Who are the children of Israel? Because this is what we're identifying.
Deacon, hey, we know that tribulation has happened to all nations, all nations, but not
That's
on a
right.
level which are complete
That's right.
on that particular nation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. We're in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 33. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always, so that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. And we had a video actually dealing with this, Elder, that we were going to present. Um, I'll read a couple more verses and we can play that if you would like, because
Okay.
it's dealing directly with
That's
this
fine.
topic here. Yeah, it's dealing directly with this topic. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 34. So that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. Yahweh shall smite thee in the knees and in the legs with a sore botch that cannot be healed, from the sole of thy foot unto the top of thy head. Yahweh shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation whither which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there shalt thou serve gods, other gods, wood and stone. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations whither Yahweh shall lead thee. When you look at the definition of the word byword, it speaks of a false name. So it was prophesied that we would be called, or that the children of Israel would be called by bywords or false names until the time of their redemption. And also, we shall be an astonishment. And if you look at the condition of our people, we have become a shaking of the head among all the nations. Our condition is astonishing. The fact that we're still alive, even in these days and times, the amount of death that takes place among our brothers. Just look up the gang violence that's taking place in our neighborhoods and in our community, and look at the amount of people that are killed. Look at the amount of children that are aborted. Look at the amount of people that are afflicted with all type of diseases and sickness. And for us to still be here as a nation and thriving, yeah. Look at how many of our brothers are incarcerated and locked up in prison.
That's right.
That's right.
Truly, it's an astonishment. It's truly an astonishment.
It is.
It is.
It is.
And we were reading the blessings that we would be lifted up on high, and that the nations that came around you, they would be brought low. You would be the head, and they would be the tail. But we see that this is not the condition. This is not the case currently. So let's go ahead and show one of these videos, Elder. This one here is dealing with racial segregation. My Elder Yehuda had presented this, and we're going to cover this a little more in detail. Yeah, as well. And we'll pick it back up at verse 37 afterwards here.
These are some powerful things that are happening to our people, man. And as you said, we still standing here because Yahweh's word must come to pass.
All right, here we go, my Elder.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, go
Whenever
ahead.
you're ready, my dear.
Whenever you're ready.
Like many songs will tell you,
bullet holes left in my peepholes. New York project. In the ghetto. Tell the homies I'm living and they ain't got hoods.
like many songs will tell you,
Bullet holes left in my peepholes. New York project. In the ghetto.
the story of what housing and other living conditions look like for many Black Americans is pretty bleak. And that's by design. In addition to artists cataloging their very personal experience,
When the landlord dissed us, no heat. Wonder why Christmas missed us.
it's been proven that the modern phenomenon of concentrated Black poverty was an intentional government-sponsored institution. This is in part why President Biden issued an executive order back in January, intended to right the historical wrongs Black folks have faced when it comes to housing and home ownership in this country. But first, let's take it back.
The dawn of the 20th century, African Americans in major cities lived scattered throughout the city. They weren't segregated particularly. It's only with the Great Migration of 6 to 7 million African Americans north and west escaping the South, the predominant response of the United States government and state and local governments to the Great Migration was to contain Black people in their own neighborhoods. And HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, was particularly a part of this role. But the precursors to HUD introduced and encouraged racially restrictive covenants, redlining of every major city where African Americans landed. The federal government was a sponsor of urban renewal, infamously called Negro removal by the great James Baldwin.
Urban renewal, which means moving the Negroes out. It means Negro removal. That is what it means. And the federal government is an accomplice to this fact.
That so-called urban renewal also included a federally sponsored interstate highway system, which was intentionally designed to mow through vibrant Black neighborhoods. Take Miami, for example. 2 highways, I-95 and I-395, bulldoze right through the predominantly Black and low-income Overtown neighborhood, previously called Colored Town during segregation.
The Department of Housing and Urban Development and the federal government writ large in the first 7 decades of the 20th century invested billions of dollars in racial segregation and concentrated poverty. Each time this country created a peculiar institution that subordinated Black people, slavery, Jim Crow, it created and dismantled it. They replaced it with another one. And the iconic Black ghetto, I don't use that as a pejorative, I use it as a descriptor, was a follow-on institution to slavery and Jim Crow. That's the legacy that every new administration inherits, and the Biden administration has as well.
Today, I'm directing the Department of Housing and Urban Affairs and Urban Development to redress historical racism in federal housing policies.
This executive order is just one of 4 signed by President Biden, designed to address racial equity in the United States. And while this progress is a step in the right direction, there's still a lot of harm to undo.
Segregation started coming down after the passage of the Fair Housing Act of 1968, which actually only got passed in the wake of Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination. In 1980, 8 out of 10 Black people would have had to move in order to be evenly integrated within metropolitan areas. Half of Black people who live in metropolitan areas still live in neighborhoods of high segregation. So we've had modest improvement, but segregation persists, and economic segregation has spiked since 1970. The so-called American dream is only working for a relatively small slice of the population that can afford to buy their way into what I call gold standard neighborhoods that have the best of everything. And everybody else struggles, and the Black poor struggle the most.
So what happens now? Well, some advocates are hopeful.
Home applauds this executive order for really focusing on historical patterns of racial segregation and discrimination in housing,
while others remain cautiously optimistic. Here's Professor Cashin's suggestion.
I don't take credit for this, but I applaud it. There should be an equity analysis. The federal government spends so much money, it should track who's getting it by neighborhood, and it should pursue racial equity in the distribution of resources. There's been a lot of movement at the local level on this. I offer the example of Baltimore. They did an equity analysis and found that they were spending 4 times as much money in majority white neighborhoods as the majority Black ones. I think we're in this moment where people are waking up, sad to say, because of the slow execution of George Floyd, to the realities of systemic racism. And I believe there is an ascending majority multiracial coalition that wants something better than a separate unequal nation that overinvests in some neighborhoods and disinvests and preys upon people in other neighborhoods. I'm hopeful, but you can never stop working for and organizing for the country you want. New generation's more radical and less tired than me. There's always another generation coming.
Hey, Shalom. That was a quick one. Yeah, I'm still getting a feedback. So if you're not getting the feedback, kind of lead the class instead of myself.
Yeah, I'm back here.
Oh yeah, you're knocked out totally. Your distortion is out there. It's crackling and everything. But at this time, we have seen even in that video about on segregation. And don't think the segregation only take place in the first world countries only, but also in the third world countries. Because the way have you heard of the Willis syndromes? The letter that he wrote out to maintain or control over these slaves for so many years, and is to use the lighter complexion within the children of Israel to rule over, the brothers and sisters, to keep everything intact for their own purpose. So these are the things that happen to our people. And these are the things when we compare the book of Deuteronomy, especially chapter 28, that Yahweh said what's going to happen to our people if we don't follow all these instructions that is written into this book. Knowing that these prophecies have to come to pass too. And as we said at our start of the class, these things we use to identify the children of Israel. These things we use also to realize that the end is upon us also. Yeah, we know we have to use like the seal also, and the trumpet and the vial, which is written in the book of Revelation, to come, to some more understanding when is the end time. And so, but first of all, we have to change our ways. We're gonna bring a nice, class on that too, to show you where we are, in history, and which kind of the seal that we're in today, and then, to have approximate, we don't know the day or the hour that is coming, but we're gonna know when it is summer, and we're gonna know when it is winter. When things are happening according to the prophecies that is given unto us today. Do you have any more videos that you want to play?
Yeah, we have our next one here.
Yeah, the videos there are coming a little bit, clearer than ourselves. And we're gonna work out that problem, So please forgive us once again, our listeners, for this problem. I think the problem is stemmed from our provider, and we have to check into that and see what's the problem, what the issue. So bear with us, and we're gonna redo this class, and hopefully the reception, is much better. We may be gonna do it on a different same platform, but maybe different settings. Do it on the round table talk. It will be much better. It's gonna be much better then, because we have worked out all the issues. But the devil always find a way to disrupt, the Most High proceeding. Blessing.
In the 18th century, British merchants shipped around 3 million people from West Africa across the Atlantic to the Americas and sold them into slavery. They made £4 trillion from the unpaid labour alone. Portugal and Holland pioneered this slave route. Britain made a national fortune from it. Much of the Britain we know today was built with slave money. Ports, cities and canals. Even the Church of England has admitted making money from the slave business. By the 19th century, most of the British elite had made their fortunes from slavery. Among them, David Cameron's distant cousin, General Sir James Duff. The Liverpool merchants who founded what's now Barclays Bank were slave traders. In 1833, when slavery was abolished, slave owners were paid £20 million in compensation for their loss of property. That's £2 billion today. More than 10 million people died as a direct result of the Atlantic slave trade, but the survivors got nothing. West Africa, nothing. Now, 15 Caribbean states, including Jamaica, have launched the first united campaign for reparations from Britain, France and Holland. They have suggested compensation equal to the sum offered to slave owners in the 1830s, £2 billion. They also want an apology, recognition of the historic atrocity.
They hid in caves. My great-grandmother was born in a cave to make sure that she was not born as a slave. And that is what Britain perpetuated.
But the British government has refused to give either. David Cameron's first official visit to Jamaica has amplified calls on Britain to agree to reparations. Some argue that if Britain did pay, it wouldn't be the elite footing the bill but the tax-paying working classes. Others have said this was 200 years ago, it's in the past, why should I pay now? In Jamaica, slavery was followed with a century of colonialism.
Most of the land is still in the hands of Europeans.
When the Brits left in 1962, 80% of the population were functionally illiterate. Male literacy remains 4 points below the global average. 19% of the country live in poverty. When historic crimes have generational victims, who should pay?
Are you back, my deacon? Yeah, praise Yah.
Yes.
Praise Yah for the little short and informative videos. Yeah, but I really want to say something about that video, my deacon. Looking at it and the wealth of Britain. Man, I heard that the chariot would bring the queen around. Man, that thing is made out of all gold, pure gold.
That's right.
It's so expensive, man. I think they value it at trillions of dollars. There's so much gold. And
That's right.
yeah, man, just realizing that they have paid out some reparation, to their slaves over there. But what happened to the rest of the slaves around the world? There is no guideline. There's no gauge to set how many they should pay for the rest of the slaves that they have used in other countries around the world. And plus, what you're saying, they were our properties, so there's no need to pay reparation. Isn't that foolishness? Come on, my people. Isn't that foolishness, which they're saying to the people? What about all these farm workers who've been to your country? They were a slave. You give them work, you pay them. That's their reparation. So what happened to our forefathers? What happened to the countries that you held their people as slaves in their own country? What happened to them? You need to pay reparation to those people also. You can set the guideline out to pay them or their children. Build schools. Help them. Help those third world countries. You are the one with all those riches. But we're not going to fight you for it. And that goes for all countries who went to especially other countries and make those countries their slave made all their people, a majority of the people, to work for free or nothing at all. You need to reward those people. At least do some righteousness, before your creator. Because one way or other, vengeance belongeth unto the Most High Yah. And he's gonna recompense one way or the other. So judgment is leave unto the Most High Yah. But it would be good for you to do
That's right.
something good to those people, so that Yahweh can
You know,
reward you for your goodness.
the prophet Habakkuk said that woe to him that buildeth a town with blood and establishes a city by iniquity. See, and it's coming. But they had to do these things. They had to do these things. So, like you say, judgment is coming.
It is coming. One way or the other. It is coming. And believe me, Yahweh is going to make you do, what He wants you to do. Because we know at some point, and we are not afraid to say these things, Yahweh is going to make you do the things that you need to do, because we know we have to go back home. He's going to make you provide all the necessary transportation to take us back home.
That's correct.
He's a God of
Because
love.
that's not true. We don't own any ships.
That's
right. We don't own any ships.
No, we cannot finance, any ship. So Yahweh, just like when we were coming out of Egypt, He allowed, the Egyptian to reward our people with all the things that they need to worship the Most High in the wilderness.
That's right.
So Yahweh is going to allow you to do the same thing too. There's nothing new under the sun. Nothing at all. You have to reward us with the things we need. We know that the paper is not good. That's why I said education, because you cannot take, that education, out of a person, unless you kill that person. You cannot take that away, but you can always take away the material things. We don't worry about material things. We're going to inherit that into the land when we return.
Correct.
Yeah, so we praise Yahweh, for everything, most of all, to understand the Shema, understand the written words, that He have given to His prophet, to give to His people in these latter days, especially in the land of our enemies. All right. We know we're reading the blessing and the cursing, and that's what we stated from. We've been having so many problems with our server. So what we're gonna do at this time, we're not gonna go too far with this time. Is almost 2 hours. So you have anything to say? I think we're gonna cut this Shabbat class a little short, and work it out and see when is the best time we're gonna redo this class, because we have a ton of information, for our people to get, but it's maybe not time. It's not time for, for our people to receive all these saying. So, but Yahweh put a break on it. He's the one that allow Satan to come in and put a break on it, to disturb us at some point. Yeah, I mean, he have the power to do whatever, written whatever is in his heart.
Yes, sir.
You have the power to do it. So I sometimes, so I'm not gonna force this class any longer, but we thank, I thought this time, we're gonna end our Sabbath class discussion, the curse, the blessing, and the curse, identification of the children of Israel. And I'm sure, my deacon would like to say something. So I know, also our feast days are coming up, so, so it's, my deacon, whatever you are, you want to input to this class.
Yes, sir, my elder. Yeah, we want to apologize again for the technical issues, and we're definitely going to redo this class as Yahweh allow. We have our new moon fastly approaching. It'll be on the 20th of March. It's also the new year.
Praise
So the
Yah.
20th of March, right? Also, we have the Passover coming up on the 2nd of April.
Praise Yah.
Yahweh, the 2nd of April at even. All right.
Praise Yah.
Unleavened bread, day 1 will be on the 3rd, and then first fruits will fall on the 4th. So, and all of these holy days are kept at even. So, Yahweh, we're looking forward to celebrating and observing this new year that's fastly approaching us. And we pray for our elder. Yahweh will regroup next week and come strong, because we definitely have some information we want to bring across to the people, the keepers of the house of life. And we just pray for Yah's mercy and pray for his continued guidance and protection. And we just pray for all our viewers and all those tuned in. We just we do ask for your patience, and we ask for your understanding. And once again, apologies for technical difficulties. And may Yahweh bless and keep you all.
Praise Yah.
Praise Yah,
Shabbat
my
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.